everyone. I'm RJ.
And I'm Ryno.
And welcome to the Launchpad, where we talk to our creators here on the Ampliverse. You'll get to know them, and most importantly, you'll get to know the exciting things that they have planned for the Ampliverse. And today, we've got a very special guest.
Oh.
It's the man, the myth, the legend, the rhinoceros. Ryno, how the heck are you?
I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Isn't how are you such a loaded answer these days? Because I feel like I'm like, good, I'm straight up lying. But
everyone is lying when they say good. I always do the like, yeah, I'm good. Like I'm thinking about it. For the viewers at home, typically, Ryan and I will be interviewing our creators in the Ampliverse, but since we're starting out now, it's just us two. We've already spent time talking about myself. Now it's Ryno's time to tell us all about the exciting projects that he's doing for the Ampliverse. So, Ryno, tell us right now, in a bulleted list form, what are your projects for the Ampliverse?
I'll start with, I guess, the audio-only podcast that I do, which is Podcast Rangers, a Power Rangers podcast. So I started this with a friend of mine, Ken, who is one of the few whenever I meet any adults that actually genuinely say they like Power Rangers, it is a day where I'm like, we should probably be friends.
You are truly the first person that I have met that also likes Power Rangers. And I watched Power Rangers religiously growing up. My brother was obsessed with the Sentai series, which is like the original Japanese series that Power Rangers is based off of. So growing up, I just always had those playing, and like the music. I was obsessed with the theme songs. I love a good Power Rangers theme song.
Oh yeah.
And when I was like in high school, like 8th grade to high school, I was still watching like them when they were on TV, and I was like, I don't know if anyone else watches Power Rangers.
It's been a show that's been on so long that if you are somebody who has been watching, there is still a lot there for me. Also, it's just like, who doesn't like putting on like Saturday morning cartoons every now and then to just have something to watch? It's just one of those, and I'm not going to give up on something that I've been invested in for the majority of the time I've been alive. I just gonna see it through. And plus, I like it. I like what it stands for. I always liked that there was, for me growing up, I don't know if you know this about me, RJ, but I'm very intelligent. I'll just toot my own horn here. But when I was a kid, it was kind of like, there superheroes were like, they were like strong, muscular, all these things, and to have some show up that were, you had like Jason, who was really into karate. You had Zach with like the karate and the hip hop keto, and then Trini, who was also into kung fu and martial arts, and then like Kimberly being the gymnast, and then you had like Billy, who didn't really know, but he wanted to try, and he always tried, and he always was there. But then he was like he saved them so many times that it was really cool to have that reflection of me in there. And then I also have always enjoyed the portrayal of that. It's also a multicultural cast all the time. Yeah. It's never just a group of one. Nobody ever looks the same all the time. And that's I've always appreciated that about Power Rangers, because I honestly, like, I grew up and I just thought that's the way it was going to be. And I'd love to see a gay Power Ranger at some point, but who knows?
You would think. Honestly, they could write a brilliant character of like a gay man who puts on lycra, and it's like, this is amazing. Yeah. Like just
my like, sexuality is compounding forward. Well, I know that in the movie Trini, played by Becky G in the 2017 Power Rangers movie, is a character who's questioning her sexuality. So, and I do very much appreciate that. But that's the beauty of the show. I think that it can always. It always has representation as one of its core values, and inclusivity and that sort of a thing. So I think there's something kind of beautiful to that message. And then obviously, like, it hit. I was just the right age to be. Yeah. I had a single mother, and I felt like they were kind of role models. They were always like, you help people that that need the help. You do the right thing when you have this power. You do the best thing you can to help as many people as you can, and so I've always enjoyed that. So it always resonated with me. When we think about like
the type of content that we have on the Ampliverse, when we were coming up with it, we were very much focused on like people really have to love the pop culture that they really want to talk about. It's like I'm so excited about it, and I love it so much that I have to talk about it and think about it, and hopefully other people can resonate with that. And I definitely feel like out of all of the shows that we have, your Power Rangers podcast probably fits the most, just because it is like there, you know, you've talked about it in your founder's note too, of like sometimes it is a little bit of a toxic fandom, but because of the strength and the inspiration that you pull from it and like just how much it means to you, it's a genuine love, like a love letter to it. I just think it's funny because once upon a time you were like, I don't think this podcast fits in the Ampliverse.
Yeah, I do. I often think to myself that I think it's hilarious that it took you up until literally days before. That like I need to move, like it should be moved over, and you were like, it's the definition of what we're doing. I also am a firm believer that it's not how much stuff you have, and it's not how many times you've seen something. It's just how does it resonate with you. It could be something that you've seen once that could change your life. Or you could have a profound impact on your life, and maybe you only had the opportunity to watch it once. Maybe you're somebody who only needs to watch it once. But you know, it's not up for people to judge how big of a fan you are. You're as big as a fan as you want to be.
I just think it's so crazy because truly, when I would watch Power Rangers in high school, I really felt like I was the only one watching them. My username for all of my accounts for the longest time was inspired by the Wild Force Megazord Clutcher mode, because I was like,
oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Obsessed that this deer Zord puts together its antlers and creates a giant bubble. Like, come on! I know for you, it's like Wild Force was like, boo,
it's like,
but
yeah, it's not one of my. It's
really
definitely
not
one of my favorites.
But
it's a lot of people love it, and a lot of people love that Zord too, the deer Zord. Honestly, I am really happy that you convinced me to move it all over, because you are right. You are 100% right. It does very much belong over here. And beyond just it being a show where I am obsessed with the fandom, I think also it speaks to the core values that we have with the Ampliverse that we try to have, which is inclusivity and diversity and you know, safe spaces and that sort of, all that sort of stuff to make me not have this weird post-traumatic stress when I talk about Power Rangers and be like, oh, okay, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. And like, I really do want to sit there and have like, because I went to school for film, and a big thing that got me fascinated in how stuff is made is how Power Rangers is made. And I don't think it ever gets the credit it deserves. Like, yes, it was slapped together in the beginning, but since like there are seasons or even episodes alone where I am just like the framing of shots and the choreography involved with camera movements and how they do it is mind-blowingly impressive, I feel like. And when we look back on it, which hopefully somewhere down the road there is some sort of look back on it, we're going to be like, wow, this was the underrated in terms of like production for what was essentially just an after-school kids show, you know. So
besides Podcast Rangers, you have also dabbled in the video realm of the Ampliverse.
Yes.
One of it was a quarantine project that became its own little planet and universe. So, and I can see them in the screen right now, peeking away. So tell us more about your show, The Adventures of King Arthur and Rocket.
Arthur. So my dogs, my two little babies, already came to be with me in 2014. He was in adoption. The person who he lived with before couldn't take care of him anymore, and he came to live with me, and so he came with the name King Arthur, and we call him Artie. And I love him so much. And then a year later, Rocket was he showed up. It's just a random course of events where I happened to see a photo of him in a shelter, and I was like, I'm gonna go see this. Like I drove like an hour and a half away, and I was like the first one to come see him, and he was like in a cage with all big dogs and not little dogs, not because the shelter was so like overrun. And I was like, when we looked in each other's eyes, I was like, you're coming home. Like, there was no question. And so it was a long process, though, to get Rocket to come and live with me. And it took a long time. And it's been a long journey because he was borderline feral. And I just was thinking, like, I've always been fascinated by the idea, fascinated in a almost, you know, in a sad way, but I don't really know where Rocket is from. I was always just like, Rocket was this mystery, and he's this dog that because he took so much trouble, I was always like, oh, someday I want to tell a story like about King Arthur and Rocket, because I love how their names were so opposite. Like Rocket being like kind of sound like spacey, and then King Arthur obviously. And I wanted to get a tattoo and of them, and I still don't have it yet, but I started to design an idea where I was like, I want it to be this kind of like really heightened version of them, this really stylistic version of them. And then I started thinking like, oh, it'd be fun to make like children's stories or a comic book or something like that, where it'd be like kind of steampunk, where like Rocket finds this Corgi and then they go on like adventures together and travel and do all these things. And then sure enough, quarantine hit, and I just kept thinking about it. I just was like, I'm stuck in the house. What am I doing? And I was like, I'm just going to Google and see, like, maybe there are like puppets. I could do something with puppets. That would be fun. I know nothing about puppeteering. I know nothing about any of this stuff. I do know that I speak in many different voices very often. For some random reason, I don't know why. I don't know what is wrong with me. I don't know the trauma I suffered that does this to me. But quarantine came, found 2 puppets. And I was like, okay, well, I can't leave the house. I have a whole like craft corner and everything like that. So I save everything. And I was like, okay, well, I've got all this felt. I've got some of this foam, because you can kind of see it in the shot here. I built a hoverboard and I had tons of foam left from that. And so I was like, okay, I wonder if I could design something. And so sure enough, I had a ton of glue guns and I set away, and I had just enough to be able to get a backdrop in with them. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe I could write a story where like he comes down and they find him. And I wrote it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I filmed it one afternoon, and people liked it, I guess. I don't know. It got a good reception, because the first episode was originally published on my personal YouTube channel, and people kept asking me, like, have sent me private message repeatedly being like, where's episode 2? Where's episode 2? And I was just kind of like, sometimes I just get stuck in my own head. I don't know if you know this. Yeah. So I needed
After working for months with you on a project, I never got that vibe from you.
Sometimes you just need somebody to show up that can kind of give you that little bit of push and just be like, just do it already. And like, and so I appreciate that you were like, okay, well, you have to do it now. You've told me you're going to do it, and now you have to do it.
Shoved you to do it.
Yeah. But what people don't know yet is that, so I wrote another episode, and you read that over with me, and then you took your shot at writing another episode. So
viewers may recognize a certain French Schnauzer Poodle mix. Yeah. I'm really excited about the show. It's very fun. It's a nice kind of like change of pace. We're not writing to kind of like be like, this is content that needs to do well, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, nope, we're just like simple storytelling. And I think that's what my favorite part about it is that, the end of the day, someone learns a lesson, and it's not just Rocket all the time. It's King Arthur too. So.
Yeah. I think that was really important, because that's kind of what friendship is that sometimes you will have that friend that knows so much more than you about some other stuff. I am a firm believer that, if you ever meet somebody who says they know everything, then you turn and walk away, because what do you have to learn from them? I believe that I have something to learn from every person in the room, and I never enter a room thinking I am smarter than anybody else that is in that room. I, in fact, always assume I am the least smart person in that room, and I honest to God believe that I can learn something from anybody that I interact with. And I just want that to kind of be one of those messages, too, that go out there, is that it's like no matter who you meet, you can still learn something, and everything can have an impact on something else. And it was one of those things where I was like, when I was a kid, there was like Eureka's Castle was on Nickelodeon, and I and who doesn't love like Sesame Street?
I love Eureka's Castle. I loved Eureka's Castle. Famously, my goal was to become like a theater for young audience like person. Like I was set to like be a teaching artist here in Orlando, and even back in Chicago, I was an actor for like a theater for young audiences, like theater. Like I was in a show that ran for like 5-6 months, so I was like fully ready to dive in. So even like helping out with you on this show, it kind of like gives me those like memories again of like, oh yes, like writing for kids. and
Yeah.
like writing with kind of like that sense of play and freedom, which is really nice.
What I love about writing for kids in that sense too is that it's not even necessarily for kids. Like the core story is there, but it's also fun to tell it framed with current events. So it boils it down that hopefully the parent who's watching it with them kind of takes that step back and looks at it. And it is a journey. And I think that we live in a day and time, and I think quarantine really showed us that we really need to be listening to each other a lot more and learning a lot more from each other, being kinder to each other and things like that. And so that was where I felt like it was also important to kind of have something like this. And plus, it was just kind of something fun and goofy to do.
Let's talk about the Bourbon Study, because also this was another idea that you were like, this doesn't really fit. I don't know. It's just kind of like me and Jill just, playing around with stuff. There's really no purpose. And I kind of had to be like, you are literally trying to debunk the culture behind bourbon, which is like also a derivative a derivative of like what we're trying to do, of like trying to debunk fandoms that may have like a specific like stereotype or toxicity that we want to try and like kind of tear apart. So talk about the Bourbon Study.
Well, so my best friend Kim was formerly, she has just resigned from that position, but was a beer master for this really popular chain of restaurants in Milwaukee that are fantastic. Like I love the food, I love the environment they go for, and all that sort of stuff. And she had done a podcast. It was like the beginning of last year, or the beginning of 2019. What is time? We lost a year. And she did this podcast, and it was all about like women in beer, because it was a podcast that essentially highlights like food, drinks, and all that sort of stuff in Milwaukee. And I was like, I love this because I love anything that highlights local stuff like that. I'm obsessed with that stuff. So, and she did essentially like 2 episodes, and it was all about women in beer. And essentially, it's women that perfected beer, and men, surprisingly, co-opted that. And there's a big thing where like a lot of the iconography associated with witches actually comes from brewers, because it was like a symbol of brewing. And so I really, listening to her, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And originally, before we even had this idea, I was telling her, I was like, we should do a podcast where every week it's just really simple. It's intro to beer, and it's because she used to do a series of like classes they do every so often called Beer Class, and so she's incredibly well versed in all these things. And I was like, well, let's do it for somebody that's very much like I see all these beers and I want to get into it, but I'm really intimidated by it, because that was me. And then I got really into craft beer, and I still don't even know all this stuff. Like I am now just trying to isolate what different hops taste like. But again, one of my good friends, Jill, who lives here, we were saying like she's in my, now that we've been able to form sort of bubbles, she's in my bubble, and she has all these bourbons, and she's like, oh, I've really gotten into bourbon and all these stuff. And her husband had gone on the bourbon trail. When they were in Japan, they brought back Japanese
Japanese whiskey. Oh my God. So good.
But this was another thing where I was like, I want to be somebody when you come over, when I can host again. I want to be able to be like, would you like an old fashioned? I want to know how to like who doesn't feel cool making like a really classic craft cocktail, right? I feel like it's very welcoming. So we just got to talking about it. And then I kind of applied that beer idea to this, where I was like, I want to go on this journey. I want to learn what it is about bourbon. Like I want to know when I'm in Total Wine and there are just there are like 50 shelves of bourbon. How do I go in and figure out, oh, I'm going to like this or I'm not going to like this? How do I look at it? How do I know that this $20 bourbon maybe is better than a $50? How is this? All this stuff where I was like, it's intimidating. It's I feel like the perception of it is very masculine oriented. It feels like it's a very like gruff bearded man. I know it's a gruff bearded man myself.
Very like speakeasy, you have to know the secret password type situation.
Yeah. And that's where I was like, okay, but I want to make it accessible. I want to make it, I really literally just wanted to do a YouTube series of videos where I was making a drink every week. And then Jill was like, well, let's learn about it. And then honestly, that journey we started, I am so fascinated by it now, because it has this really interesting, not only do the drinks themselves have history, the ones that are classics, and obviously we make up some of our own because we have a WandaVision drink. We've done some Star Wars drinks,
nice.
Falcon Winter.
Synergy.
We are all about that synergy. We are trying to tie it in. We started doing tasting videos where we're literally just tasting different labels of bourbon to describe to you how we feel about it. So that if you are somebody who's like, I want to try something I haven't had, maybe this will help you out. If you're somebody who's never had it might help. Because I am now able to be like, I know what that one bourbon tastes like, and I know what 2 bourbons taste like right now. I can finally remember. So we're all like what you said. We're demystifying this drink, trying to make it more accessible, but also trying to have some fun with it and learn about that drink. We're not fancy people. We're not fancy.
Yeah, I think what really clicked about the first episode is that you do make it a conscious effort to learn about what you're trying to make and actually like have fun doing it. And, you know, really, I think people love seeing the discovery of like, oh, yeah, I think I like this. Oh, I don't think I like this, you know?
Yeah, it adds that sense of, we're trying to, I guess one of our major goals is to really get a sense of community going, where we want people to be,
totally.
I legitimately want to hear, did you make the drink yourself? Do you have a favorite gin? Or gin? Do you have, I mean, I love gin. You can tell me your favorite gin.
The gin study.
The gin study. The juniper.
The gin journals. Something like that. Hey.
Ooh. We don't really ever talk about it, but Jill is Jilly Cakes. She was on Cupcake Wars and stuff like that. So she is also somebody out there in the world that people may know. Eventually be like, oh my gosh. Like
that's true, but I think that's like a testament to the show too. It's like you can really, and the Ampliverse too, you know, you can be interested in something that you may not have either have been known for or not have even been in your kind of like universe, but like give someone a platform to be, give someone a platform to like launch a show or whatever and see what could happen, you know?
Oh, look at that. That is just such
the
a beautiful,
synergy.
Beautiful, yeah.
The synergy.
Wow.
It always goes back to the Ampliverse. Well, I will say that I am very, very happy that we were able to connect and create this website. And I really hope that, and you've said it before, that if people also kind of like share that same passion and desire to talk about how they connect with pop culture, that this whole platform is for you. And truly, we welcome anyone that wants to do what we're doing, and we'll help you set up your own show here. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's and don't be like nervous. Don't be, if you got an idea, worst case scenario, the idea just doesn't pan out. And we just had a conversation though. Wasn't that fun? Just to like have that conversation.
Just talk about it. Exactly.
Yes. And then obviously going forward, RJ and I, since we had talked about doing this to help creators, it was easiest for us to do the interviews with each other first. But after this, I can't wait to have the other creators in the Ampliverse on as well. There are people who have some stuff in the works that I'm really excited. And even if the show's not out yet, we're going to bring them on and we're going to talk about it. And just because we really want to highlight some of these people and the amazing things that they can do. So please, you can send us an email at theampliverse@gmail.com. We have our Twitter and Instagram. They're both at the Ampliverse. And if you want to support any of the creators, buy them a coffee or anything like that, you can do that as well. I don't know if you've heard of the site. It's called Ko-fi, KOFI.com. So we have a coffee site set up. It's coffee.com/theampliverse. And we welcome any contributions that we literally just recycle right back into the website to just pay for the actual website and hopefully eventually reinvest that into any of our creators that we can as well.
Yeah. Well, Ryno, it has truly been a pleasure to talk to you about all of the wonderful, amazing projects that you're working on to the Ampliverse.
Well,
and I hope that you viewers at home have been intrigued, and hopefully you'll tune into more content and more shows that we come up here on the Ampliverse. As always, if you love the show, give us a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Join the conversation below in the comments. Let us know what some of your favorite things are about Ryno shows and what more things that you might want to see moving forward with the Ampliverse. So, Ryno, thank you again.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was so kind of you. Really.
Of course. This has been the Launchpad. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Discovering voices, building worlds. The Ampliverse.